If you're watching this video, chances are you love you some horror. Either that or you've accidentally stumbled across us, in which case, hello, welcome to the party. But even the biggest horror hounds will admit that, yeah, there have certainly been some, shall we say, quirky creative decisions made in horror over the decades. Some of those decisions have worked brilliantly, others not so much, leaving audiences more bemused and confused than anything else, which is absolutely the case for the movies featured here. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are 10 bizarre horror movie choices and why they happened. Number 10. Norma wears a baseball cap in every scene. Carrie. There's a lot going on in Brian De Palma's exceptional Carrie, and so you might have missed one of the film's more peculiar quirks. As in, PJ Soles' Norma wears a baseball cap in pretty much every single scene. Seriously, there's even a fantastic moment where she's wearing that cap while getting a hair done at a salon before the movie's show closing prom spectacular. As for the reason behind this, that's because PJ Soles was wearing that same cap when she went to her Carrie audition, with De Palma becoming strangely obsessed with the cap and insisting that PJ wore it for each next round of auditions. Of course, the actress went along with this request, and by the time the audition process was done and PJ Soles had won the part, it was clear that the cap, that was now part of how Brian De Palma saw the character. Number 9. He's killing me! Friday the 13th, the final chapter. For better or worse, Rob Dyer has one of the more memorable deaths in the Friday the 13th franchise. In the final chapter, which obviously was far from the final chapter, Rob is cornered in a basement and sliced up good and proper by Jason Voorhees. Okay, it's all fairly standard Friday the 13th fodder, right? Well, what makes this one stand out is Rob repeatedly screaming, "He's killing me!" as poor Trish Jarvis watches on in horror. Seeing someone essentially narrate their own death, yeah, that's something that some people found to be pretty laughable. However, director Joseph Zito revealed in the Crystal Lake Memories book that this scene was actually inspired by a real-life murder he'd read about in a New York City newspaper. In that attack, a man shouted, "Please stop hurting me, please stop killing me," all while being stabbed to death. That made enough of an impact on Zito that he used this as the basis for Rob's final chapter death. So, for anyone thinking this was daft, ridiculous, and totally implausible for Rob to do play-by-play, it's unfortunately more true to life than you might have thought. Number 8. The Pink Blood. Saw 3D, the final chapter. What is it with these final chapters, eh? For the most part, blood in horror tends to have a certain familiar look. You know, that rich, vibrant red. But if you watch the 7th Saw movie these days, you'll likely get a little distracted by the blood having a distinctive pink tint to it. The reason for this? Why, that's due to the 3D element of Saw 3D. For 3D movies on the big screen, 3D glasses tend to dampen the brightness and colors being projected. So, to offset this, the production team here tinted the film's red blood with some pink, so that when it was watched with 3D glasses, the blood would appear more red. Despite Saw 3D, the final chapter, making a nice chunk of change at the box office, over $130 million no less, the studio simply did not bother to regrade the colors for the standard 2D home release. So, to this very day, most of the final chapter's gore, it still has that dodgy pink tinge to it. Number 7. The Explosion of Feathers. Prophecy. John Frankenheimer's cult classic 1979 sci-fi horror flick Prophecy, it features one of the most unforgettably insane kills in the genre's history. As the Nelson family camps out in the woods, they end up attacked by a Katadin, a spirit of the forest who has a hatred for humanity, hey, don't we all? And who here resembles a twisted, mutated bear. When young Paul Nelson tries to hop away while still zipped up in his sleeping bag, schoolboy error Paul, the Katadin is not messing around, sending Paul flying into a nearby rock at lightning speed, causing the poor lad to explode into a bunch of feathers. Yes, feathers. For over 40 years, fans have been left baffled that Paul's death didn't feature a single drop of blood or any dismembered limbs. As legend has it, this was reportedly due to the low budget of the film, with Prophecy simply not able to afford the gore effects needed to be a bit more realistic with this death sequence. And so, a sleeping bag and some feathers it was then, giving us one of the most visually bizarre deaths in horror movie history. Number 6. The Disappearing Corpses. Resident Evil. With 7 live-action Resident Evil movies to date, have any of them actually been, well, any good? If anything, the best of the bunch is probably the very first film, which is a great sci-fi horror movie, though not exactly faithful to the source material. And likely the most memorable part of that film is, yeah, that sequence where a crack commando unit is sliced into meaty chunks by a swanky laser defense system. Here, it's made abundantly clear that this whole whole situation has left quite the nasty mess behind. But when Alice and her other survivors return to that same area later, surprisingly, all of those corpses are nowhere to be seen, with not even any blood left lying around. Something actually pointed out by Kaplan, letting the audience know that no, this was not a mistake. So why did Paul W.S. Anderson do this? Well, that's actually a reference to the original Resident Evil games, where if you kill a zombie and return to that room later, the corpse will have disappeared for technical reasons. So within the context of the movie, this is all a bit odd. But for longtime fans of the video game series, this is actually a nice little wink nudge moment. Number 5. Dennis's karate. Cabin fever. Eli Roth's cabin fever is often remembered for that leg shaving sequence. Yeah, that's the grim one. We all remember it. But one other scene that many still talk about for different reasons is when we meet young Dennis, who is the son of a local general store owner. When the infected Bert visits the store looking for help, Dennis starts shouting, "Pancakes, pancakes, 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 and a bit more pancakes," excitedly jumping around and pulling out some sweet karate moves. Well, just because, why not? Oh, and then Dennis bites Bert's hand, which is also totally natural behavior, of course. While the pancakes and karate might reek of improv, the pancakes element plays out exactly as is said in the original script. As for the random karate moves, that was because Eli Roth saw Dennis actor Matthew Helms performing them during a break between setups. So impressed was Roth, he decided, yeah, I'm gonna add these movies to the film at the very last minute, and that is why we got what we got. Number 4. The reversed waterfall. Anaconda. We might currently have a Jack Black and Paul Rudd fronted reboot on the way, but there's still one question that many fans have about the original 1997 Anaconda. During the third act, when Terry is tending to the wounded Dr. Kale, why do we have an establishing shot that shows their boat sailing past the waterfall whose water is flowing backwards? As in, the water, it's traveling upwards. It makes for quite the odd visual, but there's actually a pretty easy basic answer here. Either the crew were unable to, or maybe forgot, to shoot a shot of the boat heading in the right direction, and so the shot was simply reversed during post-production. While isolating the waterfall in the shot and reversing the flow would be a relatively trivial VFX task in modern Hollywood, back in 1997, yeah, it might have been considered just a little bit more hassle than it was worth. Number 3. The Predator's Secret Proposal. Predator 2. In fairness, you'd have to be extremely eagle-eyed to catch this one at all, as it flashes up on your screen for literally fractions of a second. In Predator 2's brilliantly brutal slaughterhouse sequence, the one where Gary Busey and his men get killed, the Predator's gauntlet briefly malfunctions, at which point a strange message is briefly visible on it. Look closely and you'll be able to read, "Marry me," followed by the word pointer. Why would the Predator be proposing to anyone? Well, it turns out this was actually an Easter egg included by one of Predator 2's animation artists, Don Pointer, who, yes, used this moment to propose to his then girlfriend. Did this weirdly sweet gesture pay off, you may ask? Well, no, it didn't. No, I'm joking, it did. It totally did. A fan managed to get in touch with Don in 2019, with Don confirming that yes, their proposal was successful. The two got married, and they had just at that point in time celebrated their 28th wedding anniversary. Congratulations. In a movie about an extraterrestrial serial killer terrorizing Earth, this is something oddly wholesome to come out of Predator 2. Number 2. The ambiguous setting. Hellraiser. The original Clive Barker novella on which Hellraiser is based, that'd be The Hellbound Heart, was set in England, and it's incredibly obvious that the first movie was also shot in the UK. You just need one look at the architecture and surrounding areas, and yes, you will be well aware that this is Britain. Still, Hellraiser keeps its actual setting strangely ambiguous, never properly committing to a set country, and muddying the waters further by having its cast speak with a variety of British and American accents. In fact, some fans have argued that this detracts from the quintessential Britishness of Barker's story, but they're all a bit distracting to watch a film clearly shot in the UK, and it even makes reference to English villain Julia being back on her home turf. With Clive Barker writing and directing that first Hellraiser movie, it wasn't his intent to take this approach. Instead, financier New World Pictures convinced Barker to give the movie a more vague transatlantic setting in post-production, playing down the British architecture in editing, and even having several British accents redubbed with an American twang. You could say this was a bit of an odd choice, but then, doesn't that only heighten Hellraiser's already bizarre vibe from the get-go? We'll let you be the judge. Number 1. Mary's Corpse Moves. The Last House on the Left. In Wes Craven's unforgettably grim and brutal 1972 debut, The Last House on the Left, poor protagonist Mary Collingwood is shot and killed, and that's just the basics of it, by the psychotic Krug and his gang. Poor Mary and her pal, they are put through the ringer, to say the least. But after that, Mary's dead body is later discovered by her parents. There is, though, a strange quirk in that sequence, as while Mary is very much dead, it's easy to see that she's still breathing and moving. Make no mistake though, this was not a result of bad acting or wonky directing on a low-budget picture. Instead, Craven actually shot the film with Mary surviving long enough for her to identify Krug to her parents when they finally find her. However, Wes decided during editing that, nah, I'm just gonna scrap that part of the story. As a result, Wes Craven had to basically cut around Mary clearly being alive, doing his best to give the impression that she was already dead, all while dubbing in new dialogue to let the audience know that, just ignore all that breathing and moving. Nah, Mary's totally dead, honest.